Hello everybody, welcome back. It's been a while since I've done a video, but I wanted to hop on this one for everybody's good friend Jeff Witcher at Jeff Witcher's Vinyl Destination. Jeff is putting on a contest. He's just hit the 3,000 subscriber mark, which is not a surprise at all. Jeff probably puts more time and effort into his videos than just about anybody in our little music community here on YouTube. Um, Everybody's already said everything about Jeff. He's funny guy up there in Michigan. I would love to hang out with Jeff. We've kind of teased the idea of the two of us meeting somewhere like in Kentucky one of these days, kind of for like a weekend get together, a rendezvous of sorts. Just have a good time. I think that would be a really great opportunity. You all know Jeff. He hangs out with, you know, kind of like the cream of the crop on YouTube. He makes time for the top and doesn't worry about the little people. So he's always hanging out with people like Gary at Physical Format Rock and Roll, Brandon, Mr. Hall of Fame, Aaron Muth Alamere, Chris Prokvy, Josh over at the Flip Side. They're kind of, in their little upper echelon, their upper crust, whereas, us lowly serfs like myself and Steve at All the World's a Stage or Rich Strickler, we're kind of in our own little, we're cleaning up the messes that Jeff and his fellow, upper echelon friends, as it were, leave behind for us to pick up. But with all that to say, I have had the opportunity to work with Jeff a couple times. He was on a series that I did with Rich Strickler where we ranked classic albums song by song. We did Sticky Fingers with Jeff. I've been on one of Jeff's live streams talking about Michael Nesmith. I think I've been on one or two others with him. I've, sent him a couple messages back and forth. Jeff has sent me a couple of very nice gifts over the last year or so through the mail. So he's just an all-around great guy, very creative, and I highly recommend his channel, which I will have his contest video below. So please check him out. But again, you all know Jeff. And Jeff has a very easy contest. He wants us to show 3 albums that we've never shown before. And the prize is very cool. He's promised that he would do, as part of his deep dive series where he delves into albums extensively, like one at a time, he was gonna choose 3 albums that we pick to go into. So if I'm picked, I'll get to choose 3 albums that Jeff will do a little mini series on, which is kind of cool. It's not your typical gift card or money. Jeff doesn't want to give his money away, which is understandable. He's got to pay off Gary and those guys to join his live stream, so he's probably running a little short, but that's okay. So he wants us to show 3 albums we've never shown before. This was difficult because I've shown so many albums as recent purchases, and I've done my own, album rankings and that sort of thing. But I went through it, and one album that I don't think I've shown before, one of my favorite artists, and I wanted to show this because I would say this is kind of an essential if you want this artist's full catalog. That is the Greatest Hits by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Now, I know I've shown every other Tom Petty comp and album that I have. Don't think I've shown this one. And the reason this one is important is this was the album that essentially broke up the original Heartbreakers drummer from the Heartbreakers. So Stan Lynch, who was the original drummer from the early days right up until 1994, well, 93, I guess, he was not invited to play on the Wildflowers album by Tom Petty. That was a solo album, but the kind of interesting thing was that the other members of the Heartbreakers were all over that album. Howie Epstein, Ben Tench, Mike Campbell, they're all over that album. And Stan wasn't invited. So they were using Steve Ferrone in the sessions. Ringo played on some drums. I think Jim Keltner might be on a track or two, but at the same time, the record label was wanting Petty to put out Greatest Hits. And so he's like, great. But the condition was they wanted 2 new tracks on this to sell it even more. Like, here's 2 new tracks that we're going to put out there. And Petty thought that was the stupidest idea. He's like, why on earth would I put out new tracks on a Greatest Hits? They're not hits. They're going to be brand new. But with that, they said, we want the Heartbreakers to play on it. So there was already a lot of friction. From what I understand, they jammed for quite a while and were playing old 60s covers together, doing some, figuring out what songs to play. And Petty was also not happy that he had to give up an original track that could have been on the Wildflowers album. So he finally figured out what song to play, and the song that ends up coming out is Mary Jane's Last Dance, which of course became a huge hit in its own right. So over time, it fits right on this album, but at the time, that was a brand new track. So that was the last official, original Petty and the Heartbreakers track that Stan Lynch played on, and I think he pretty much was fired from the group after those sessions. And the other track on here is a cover of the Thunderclap Newman song, Something in the Air, which they do a really admirable job on. Really, really cool. But you have all the stuff on here like American Girl, Listen to Her Heart Break Down, Refugee, You Got Lucky, The Waiting, Free Fallin', Running Down a Dream. So this is essential. Greatest hits by Tom Petty. Next is an album I've seen a couple different times in other videos, unrelated. That's the last official album by Pink Floyd called The Endless River. I don't think I ever showed this. Funny enough, this was actually the first Pink Floyd album that I purchased. And I wasn't even a huge Pink Floyd fan, but there was so much hype around this. And I know at that time, this was the highest pre-order of any album on Amazon, which of course this has been beat many, many times over. But this is from 2014. It was kind of put out as a tribute to Richard Wright, the keyboardist who had passed away. So the only members of Pink Floyd on this are, well, the only living members of Pink Floyd were Nick Mason and Dave Gilmour, who took a lot of sessions from the Division Bell era and added some overdubs and some new parts, and used all of Richard Wright's stuff to make this kind of ambient instrumental album, with the exception of the last song called Louder Than Words, which was a co-write from David Gilmour and his wife, Polly Samson, which is a pretty good track. I don't go to this album much at all, but it's cool to have it. I know a lot of people, they're kind of lukewarm on it, but needless to say, it did sell a lot, and it was kind of a nice way to say goodbye to Richard Wright. So Endless River is number 2. And this one, I feel like I might have shown it once. I don't think I have, but I think maybe when I was talking about favorite live albums. But anyway, this album is a favorite live album of mine. This is Bare Bones by Bryan Adams. I saw Bryan twice on this tour, a few years apart. He did the tour. He would do his electric stuff, in between. And then he would come back out and do an acoustic tour. And that's what this is. It's an acoustic, essentially greatest hits that he did. When he did the tour, it was just him on the guitar. And then his piano player, Scott, what's his name? Let's see. Oh, Gary Brett. So yeah, it's a very, very cool collection. And there's shows that I saw Bryan Adams. He sounded phenomenal. But you've got, Here I Am from the Spirit soundtrack. Everything I Do It For You, Cuts Like a Knife, Please Forgive Me, Summer of '69, Heaven, Straight from the Heart, and then All for Love. But there are a bunch of other tracks on here too. Really, really cool packaging, kind of that metallic wording, and it's just a really, really cool album. Bryan sounds great on it. So there you go, everybody. Go subscribe to Jeff. Again, that video is below. Jeff, you're the best. Of course, everybody knows I'm kidding when I talk about Jeff. He really is a great guy and really does have a really good heart. So y'all subscribe to Jeff. Check him out. He's hilarious. And yeah, y'all be good. Take care. We'll talk to you in the next one. Bye now.